Hello, and welcome back for another volume of truly disturbing tales taken from Reddit. If this is your first time joining us, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy creepy tales and true crime, then you've come to the right place. We upload multiple times a week, and I enjoy interacting with subscribers, so please leave thoughts and comments down below. We also operate an Instagram page, so feel free to follow us there for scary facts, previews of upcoming releases, and otherwise unsettling posts. But without any further delay, let's get to today's stories. This story takes place when I was about 16 years old, and because of my living situation, at least twice a month I'd have to make a 2-hour drive from a city area back to my parents' house in a rural area. I'd say about an hour and a half of that drive was just country road with nothing but valley, corn, or some other crop on either side, with the occasional farmhouse or something you might think that people would go in and out of willingly along the way. Because of how used to this drive I was, I didn't think much of not having cell service or seeing any phone booths along the way. I mean, in all the times driving, nothing had happened yet, so surely nothing would happen ever, right? Well, in the middle of one of those drives back, while the night was slowly taking over as I was driving, I saw a flash of light in the distance. That was weird. Maybe just an anemic moment? Another flash. Well, maybe someone was coming this way and their high beams are wonky or something. And then another flash. Alright, something's wrong. I slowed down a bit as to not get blinded periodically and eased my car to the side of the road to try and figure out what was ahead. Further in the distance, I think I see a person. Actually, multiple people. My eyesight's well and good at this point in my life, so I was putting 2 and 2 together, getting close enough to realize there were 4 people on this country road, lined up across it as if to make a roadblock to prevent any cars from passing through. Another note to this is that I don't see any car around them that they could have come in or stepped out of. I don't remember any farmhouses or sheds nearby either. The rest of this encounter felt like it took place in the span of an hour because of my fear and anxiety, but it was likely no more than 5 minutes in hindsight. I'm driving maybe 10 miles an hour now as I'm getting closer and realizing that I'm definitely, without a doubt, approaching a line of 4 grown-ass people with huge, bright white masks on, staring in my direction. 2 of them definitely have bats, or some other distinctly long blunt objects, and one person is holding something that the flashes are coming from. I've seen enough horror movies and heard enough stories about crimes on road like this to think that in this moment, I only have 2 options. Slow down and hope they eventually part ways around my car, running the risk that they could very well get the jump on me and my dinky car, or pick up the pace and disregard whether or not they'll have the chance to move out of the way when I potentially accelerate through them. I decided on the latter. I had no means to protect myself with other than a bat in the trunk of my own car, and at this time I was a young teen who could easily get knocked down with a solid slap because of my build. And my car was trash enough to where if I stopped, I wouldn't doubt that someone could break in with ease. Now, hearing gravel and dirt kick up from under my tires, I was more freaked out at the potential that I could drive myself off the road, along with taking out some strangers, who I'm now dead certain are carrying bats as I accelerate towards them. I'm properly freaking out, but I've accepted that this was the decision that I made. I accelerated more, and thankfully the 2 that were directly in my way lunged out of the way just in time not to get hit. I stop accelerating to catch my breath, as if I needed to, and see them in my rearview mirror. The 2 that didn't have to jump out of the way, for some reason are now hauling ass towards my car, as if they could catch up, and it became so real in that moment that there were people who were intentionally trying to get the jump on me in the middle of fucking nowhere. And probably not just snot-nosed kids trying to get kicks and giggles out of freaking someone out, but real adults trying to harm someone that came that way. I just focused on driving out of there as fast as I could. I focused on going forward, didn't turn the radio back on to distract me, and felt shaken by the experience in general. The most messed up part, honestly, was getting home and realizing that part of what I was driving on wasn't gravel. It was nails that were now embedded into my tires. Praise whatever God may be out there for me somehow having those sturdy-ass tires. I didn't tell my parents the full story about what happened, and they just assumed I was being reckless and someone was playing a prank with scattering those nails about randomly on the road. I told the story to some of my friends, and they told me I probably wasn't in any serious situation, and they were just trying to get a scare out of me, especially since being in a car was a pretty big advantage in the situation, which I can't deny. Still, creeped the absolute hell out of me, and I remember it every single time I drive down a road that looks any type of similar. This is something that I add on to the end of the story after having told it to friends beforehand, but this happened before those Purge movies came out. Otherwise, I would have definitely felt more comfortable saying it wasn't creepy and just annoying/bothersome. I still wonder where they came from though, since I very clearly remember there not being a car anywhere close by, nor any buildings around. I know that this experience was mostly in a car, but because of the proximity and near intimate relation between my car and an external human's body, it definitely felt like a personal creepy encounter, and I'll stand by that much. Also, given the potential of direct one-on-one human interaction, should I have slowed down enough. Had to tell this one to someone other than my friends, since they've mostly heard the story, and I just had a nightmare about it again just a night ago. I still don't know if I'm overreacting about the situation. All I know for sure is that those were definitely people, and that I was definitely afraid for my life. This happened a couple years ago now, and there really isn't much to this story, but I often find myself wondering just what could have happened. One night, me and the missus were at a pub having a couple drinks semi-close to where we lived. It was getting kind of late, so we thought it was time to walk home. As we're leaving the pub, we both are pretty hungry and just keen for some snacks. So we decide to stop at the gas station that's between the pub and our house and load up on all our favorite junk food. Now this is a walk we've done a bunch of times to get snacks on the way home, but this time, about halfway there, something happens. We're walking alongside of the road when we hear a crunching of footsteps behind us. As we both turn over our shoulders to take a look, there's a man about 50 yards behind us. In another situation, this man might be nondescript, but he stood out like a sore thumb while walking behind us in the manner that he was. No older than 30 or 40 at the most. His face looked withered though, especially in the pale light of the night. His gait was elongated and seemed just unnatural. Either way, we weren't going to stick around to pass judgment, and we just decided to press on. But as we turned back around, we started to hear his steps get louder and louder. We both admit that the vibe was off at this point, but we also weren't too far from the gas station, so we pick up our own speed, hoping that once we get there, if this dude is planning on doing something, he's less likely to do it in a well-lit area with plenty of people around. As we picked up our walking pace to a fairly brisk speed, we hear this guy start to speed up again. So we decide to pick up our pace once more. And at this point, we're basically jogging to get to this gas station. I didn't look back, but I could all but hear this guy running to catch up with us. I say that to say that this section of road this guy was following us on is extremely poorly lit. Like, there isn't even streetlights for a large stretch of time. So we were supremely thankful to see the shine of the gas station lights as we get around the corner, feeling safe in its warming glow. We go in, still wanting to get those snacks of course, and wouldn't you know that the guy follows us in, and he just stares at us the entire time we're in there. We do our best to take as much time as possible, hoping that he'd just give up on whatever he was planning and leave. Eventually, he finally leaves the gas station without buying or doing anything except for staring at us. We stop messing around at this point and go to the counter to buy our snacks. As we're leaving, we notice this guy is across the road, still eyeballing us and waiting right where we'd need to go if we wanted to continue our walk home. We decided to call a cab at that point instead of walking. We were definitely getting a dodgy vibe off this dude, and I do wonder what he was planning. I'm pretty glad I didn't find out though, because he seemed determined on us. It was odd either way, and while it may not have been the creepiest thing ever, I'm just happy nothing bad actually happened. A few months ago, I was driving home from a friend's house at about midnight. I was heading down a small one-way street that is pretty much always dead after business hours. Not paying much attention because this was the road that I drove down regularly and felt pretty comfortable on it, when a very thin woman with scraggly gray hair, maybe in her 50s or 60s, that I hadn't immediately noticed on the sidewalk, suddenly walked into the road right in front of my car. I hadn't been driving very fast, so I stopped to let her cross, although I wondered why she didn't wait for me to pass, as there were no cars behind me. She didn't cross all the way. She stopped in the middle of the street, then turned and walked right up to my car. She put her hands on the hood and leaned forward so she was locking eyes with me through the windshield. Her pupils were gigantic, her expression was angry, and she stared at me unblinkingly. She looked almost demonic. My reaction was pretty automatic. I started shaking my head and loudly repeating, "No, no, no," to try to signal that I didn't want to interact with her. She didn't move at all, and for a split second, I wondered if she needed some kind of help. But the look in her eyes and the way she didn't say anything put me completely on edge. I threw the car in reverse and lurched away from her. She stood up straight in the middle of the road, stared at me for a second longer, then turned and nonchalantly walked back to the same side of the street she had come from. I put my car in drive and hurried past her to continue home. As I peered in my rearview mirror, I saw that she had emerged back into the street, nearly the same position where I had seen her, but this time she had her hands over her head, almost in a howling position. Why? I have no idea. After the fact, I decided that this lady was probably really high on something, and maybe she didn't want to cause me any harm, but the expression in her eyes as they bore into mine was beyond creepy, and more than enough to keep me from driving down that road, whether in broad daylight or in the dead of night.